The icy water descended upon them like a judgment. Sarah Thompson, 32, clutched her 8-month-old baby, Leo, tighter as the freezing liquid soaked her patched-up clothes. Her son Leo cried out from the shock, his tiny body trembling violently against his mother's chest. The woman in red heels, who had just emptied the bucket over them, looked down with disdain. "How many times do I have to tell you not to stand in front of my house?" yelled Mrs. Davies, owner of the 2-story house in the upscale Sunnybrook estate. "You disgust me, you and that grubby kid." Sarah didn't respond. Her lips trembled, but not from cold. It was February 2012, and for 3 weeks, she and her 4 children had been living on the streets. She didn't even have the strength to defend herself. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am," she whispered, lowering her head as she shuffled away with clumsy steps, carrying her drenched baby and pulling her 4-year-old daughter, Millie, by the hand. "We won't pass this way again." The other 2 children, Jack, 7, and Sam, 5, walked behind their mother, their stomachs growling with hunger. For 2 days, they had only eaten stale bread rolls a kind lady at the market had given them. The stench of rubbish from nearby bins mingled with Mrs. Davies' expensive perfume, creating a contrast that hurt more than any physical blow. Sarah never thought the day would come when she'd have to beg for food for her children. Just 6 months prior, she had a different life. She worked cleaning houses, earning around $350 a week, and lived with her 4 children in a tiny rented room in the Riverbend suburb. It wasn't much, but it was enough for bread, beans, rice, and a bit of chicken. On Sundays, her hands were raw from bleach and scrubbing pads, but her children ate every day. Everything changed when the landlord sold the property without warning. He gave her 3 days to leave. Sarah searched for another place, but no one would rent to a single mother with 4 children. She tried to stay with her sister, but her sister's husband kicked her out on the second night. "I can't afford to keep my family and yours," her brother-in-law, Mark, had told her with a look that brooked no appeals. "Sorry, Sarah. We've got enough on our plate." That's how life on the streets began. They slept under a underpass near the market, on cardboard boxes Sarah collected during the day. In the mornings, she would go looking for work, carrying Leo in her arms, and leaving the other 3 in the care of Jack, who, at 7, had a seriousness that belied his age. But no one would hire a woman with a baby in her arms and 3 children waiting on the street. That February afternoon, after Mrs. Davies had thrown the icy water on them, Sarah walked to a corner shop and asked permission to clean her children with the free napkins from the counter. The owner, a man in his 50s with a gray mustache, nodded silently. There was compassion in his eyes, but also helplessness. He too was struggling to keep his business open. Sarah wiped Leo's wet face. He was still crying. His small body shivered. She didn't even have a dry blanket to wrap him in. Her other 3 children looked at her with eyes that spoke 1,000 words. "Mummy, why did that lady throw water on us?" Millie asked with her broken little voice. "What did we do wrong?" Sarah didn't know how to answer. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. "Nothing, my love. We didn't do anything wrong." "I'm hungry, Mummy," Sam said, rubbing his stomach. "My tummy hurts." "I know, my darling, I know." Jack, the eldest, said nothing, just pressed his lips together and looked away. At 7, he already knew there was nothing his mother could do. He already knew what it meant to have an empty stomach for days. Sarah checked her pockets. She had exactly $5, enough to buy a loaf of bread and nothing more. But bread alone wouldn't feed 4 hungry children. She needed something more. She needed a miracle. That night, under the cold underpass that was their temporary home, Sarah spread the wet cardboard on the concrete floor. Leo cried incessantly, probably catching a cold from the icy water. She had nothing to cure him, no medicine, no money to take them to a doctor. She only had her trembling hands and a faith that was fading with each passing day. When the children finally fell asleep, huddled together for warmth, Sarah knelt on the cold ground and closed her eyes. "My God," she whispered with a broken voice. "I know I'm no one to ask you for anything. I know I've made mistakes, but my children don't deserve this. They are innocent. They've done nothing wrong." Tears streamed down her dirty cheeks. "Please, if you exist, if you are really there, give me a sign, give me a chance. Don't let me die with them on this street. If you want to punish me, do it, but not them. I beg you." Silence was the only reply here. The roar of cars passing over the underpass above them was deafening. The smell of urine and rubbish was unbearable, and the night's chill seeped through her children's wet clothes. Sarah lay down next to her 4 children and hugged them with all her strength. Leo coughed in his sleep. Millie trembled. Jack and Sam clung to her arms, as if she were their only connection to life. What Sarah didn't know was that that very night, as she cried in silence so as not to wake her children, someone was watching her from above. Someone had heard every word of her prayer, and someone was about to change her life forever. If this story is already touching your heart, subscribe to the Jesus in My Story channel and activate the bell to join us until the end. What you are about to discover will change the way you see the power of faith. 3 days after the icy water incident, Sarah woke before dawn. Leo had spent the night coughing, and his forehead was burning with fever. He urgently needed medicine, but she didn't have $1. She had spent the last $5 on bread rolls that were already gone. It was 5 a.m. on February 23rd. The sky was still dark. Sarah looked at her 4 children asleep on the dirty cardboard and felt her heart break into pieces. Leo was breathing with difficulty. His skin was pale. If she didn't get help soon, her baby could worsen. "God, please," she murmured, stroking her son's hot forehead. "Don't take him from me. Please, don't take him from me." She got up carefully so as not to wake the children and left the makeshift shelter under the underpass. She needed to get something, anything. She walked towards the market that opened early, hoping some stallholder might need help carrying boxes or cleaning up. The streets of Riverbend were empty at that hour. Only a few early morning workers walked briskly towards bus stops. Sarah walked quickly, rubbing her arms to fight the morning chill. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she was already used to that constant pain. When she arrived at the Palmetto market, only 3 stallholders were setting up. Sarah approached an elderly lady selling fruits and vegetables. "Good morning, ma'am. Do you need help with anything? I can carry boxes, clean, whatever." My voice sounded desperate. "I have a sick baby and I need to buy medicine." The woman, about 60 years old with her gray hair in a braid, looked at her with pity. "Oh, love, I don't have much work today, but wait." She rummaged in her apron and pulled out a $10 note. "Here, it's not much, but it's what I can give you." Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. "God bless you, ma'am. God bless you 1,000 times over. Go on, go to your son, and may God be with you." With that $10 in her hand, Sarah ran back to the underpass. But when she was half a block away, she saw something that made her stop dead in her tracks. A man was crouched beside her children. Panic flooded her. She ran with all her might, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hey, get away from my children." The man slowly straightened up and turned towards her. Sarah stopped a few meters away, panting. He was a middle-aged man, perhaps around 35 or 40 years old. He wore simple clothes, worn denim jeans and a plain white t-shirt. His feet wore simple sandals. But what struck Sarah most were his eyes. They were deep, dark, and shone with a special light that did not come from the rising sun. There was something in his gaze that conveyed an inexplicable peace. "Don't be afraid, Sarah," the man said with a soft but firm voice. "I mean no harm." Sarah froze. How did he know her name? She had never seen him before. Who are you? How do you know my name?" The man smiled tenderly and pointed to the sleeping children. "Your little Leo needs help. His fever is high." Sarah's heart beat faster. This man knew her son's name. He knew about his fever. "How?" she started to ask, but the words caught in her throat. The man approached her slowly, unhurriedly. He carried a cloth bag in his right hand and extended it towards Sarah. "Here, this is for you and your children." Sarah looked at the bag with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside were children's medicines. Cough syrup, oral rehydration solution, bandages, antiseptic, and 2 bottles of vitamins. There were also 3 bags of bakery pastries, a liter of milk, and several containers with prepared food, rice, chicken casserole, and baked beans. Tears began to stream down Sarah's cheeks uncontrollably. "No, I can't accept this. Who are you? Why are you doing this for us?" The man looked at her with those deep eyes that seemed to see into her soul. "Because you have never been alone, Sarah. Every tear you have shed, every prayer you have whispered in the darkness, I have heard. But how do you know all this about me? I know your heart. I know that yesterday you prayed asking for a sign. I know that 3 days ago a cruel woman threw icy water on you while you were carrying your son. I know that you gave your last piece of bread to your children before going to sleep with an empty stomach. I know that last night you asked God to punish you, but to save your children." Sarah fell to her knees. It was impossible. Nobody knew those things. She had prayed in silence. No one had been there when Mrs. Davies threw the water. No one knew what she had said to God in the privacy of her suffering. "Who are you?" she repeated, this time with a broken voice. "Please, tell me." The man knelt down to her eye level and placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. His touch was warm, comforting, as if all the peace in the world was concentrated in that gesture. "You have known my name since you were a child, Sarah. You teach me to your children when you sing to them before they sleep. You invoke me every time you don't have the strength to take another step." Sarah's eyes opened wide. A shiver ran through her entire body. But it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something sacred. "It can't be," she whispered. "It can't be. I have never abandoned you," the man said, and his eyes filled with tears. "I was with you when you became homeless. I was with you when you cried in the rain. I was with you when you thought life wasn't worth living anymore. I have always been there, Sarah, and I will never leave you." Sarah covered her face with her hands and began to sob deeply, cries that came from the depths of her being. All the pain, all the despair, all the fear accumulated over months poured out of her at that moment. "Forgive me," she cried. "Forgive me for doubting. Forgive me for thinking you had abandoned me." The man hugged her with paternal tenderness. Sarah felt a warm light envelop her, as if the sun had risen just for her. An unmistakable perfume filled the air. Roses mixed with something sweeter, something celestial she couldn't describe in words. "You have nothing to ask forgiveness for," the man whispered in her ear. "Your faith, even in the midst of pain, has been your salvation." Behind them, Jack had woken up and was watching the scene with wide eyes. He saw the man hugging his mother. He saw the soft light that seemed to surround them. And though he was only a 7-year-old boy, he knew he was witnessing something that would mark his life forever. When Sarah lifted her head, the man had already moved a few steps away. He smiled at her with infinite sweetness. "Take good care of your children, Sarah. They will do great things, and you are stronger than you imagine. This trial will end soon, but what you learn from it will stay with you always." "Wait, please." Sarah quickly stood up. "Are you leaving? Will I see you again?" The man pointed towards her children, who were beginning to wake up. "You will see me in your children's eyes every day. You will see me in the face of every needy person you encounter on your path. You will see me every time you extend your hand to help someone else. But how can I thank you? By doing the same thing I did for you. When you have abundance, share with the hungry. When you have shelter, open your door to those who have nowhere to sleep. When you have peace, comfort those who cry." Sarah nodded. Tears continued to fall, but now they were tears of gratitude, relief, and renewed hope. "I will. I promise you." The man began to walk towards the street. The sun was already rising, and the first rays of light illuminated his figure. Sarah blinked from the glare, and when she opened her eyes again, the man had vanished. There was no corner to turn, no car to get into. He was simply gone. The air where he had been was still perfumed with that scent of roses and holiness. The light seemed brighter, warmer. Jack ran to his mother. "Mummy, who was that man? Where did he go?" Sarah hugged her son tightly and looked up at the sky, which was now bright with dawn. "He was someone very special, my love. Someone who has never left us alone. Don't go now. What comes next will leave you speechless. Stay until the end to discover how this story concludes." The other 3 children woke up with their mother's movement and crying. Leo opened his little eyes, and for the first time in 3 days, he didn't cry. His fever had gone down. Sarah took him in her arms and held him tight against her chest, silently giving thanks. "Look, my darlings," she told her children, showing them the bag the mysterious man had left. "We're going to have breakfast, real food." The children's eyes lit up. Millie clapped her little hands. Sam smiled for the first time in days, and Jack looked at the bag as if it were a treasure fallen from the sky. Sarah took out the containers of food and the pastries. She distributed generous portions among her 4 children, and for the first time in weeks, she also ate. The taste of the chicken casserole was the most delicious thing she had tasted in a long time, not because it was exceptionally well seasoned, but because it was food given with love, food that had arrived when they needed it most. "It tastes good, Mummy," Millie said, her mouth full of rice. "Where did you get it?" Sarah didn't know how to explain what had happened. How do you tell such small children that you just received a miracle? How do you explain that the man who brought them food was not an ordinary man? "An angel brought it to us," she finally said, because she couldn't find a better way to describe it. "A real angel?" Sam asked with wide eyes. "With wings?" "I don't know if he had wings, my darling, but I'm sure he was sent by God." Jack, who had been the only one to see the man, nodded seriously. "I saw him, Mum. There was light around him, and he smelled really nice, like the flowers at church." After breakfast, Sarah gave Leo his medicine following the instructions on the bottle. The baby took it without protest, as if he knew it was exactly what he needed. Within hours, his cough improved, and his temperature returned to normal. But the miracle didn't end there. That same afternoon, as Sarah washed her children's clothes at a public tap at the market, a woman approached her. It was Brenda, owner of a small local diner near the train station. "Excuse me, dear," she said. "I've seen you around here with your children. Are you looking for work?" Sarah looked up, surprised. "Yes, ma'am. Anything. I can clean, cook, carry, whatever. I need help in my diner. It's hard work. Washing dishes, cleaning tables, helping in the kitchen. The hours are from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'll pay you $450 a week, and you can bring your children. I have a small room out the back where they can stay while you work." Sarah felt her legs tremble. $450 a week. A place to be with her children while she worked was too good to be true. "Really, ma'am, would you really give me that job?" Brenda smiled warmly. "I can see you're a good woman, and your children look well behaved. Start tomorrow if you like." Sarah fell to her knees and took Brenda's hands. "God bless you, ma'am. You don't know what this means to me. I swear on my children I won't let you down." "Get up, woman." Brenda helped her to her feet. "We've all been through tough times. I know what it's like to be hungry and not know how you're going to feed your children. Someone helped me when I needed it, and now I can help you." That night, Sarah and her 4 children slept in the small room behind the diner. It was small, barely 3 meters by 3 meters, but it had an old mattress and 2 clean blankets. For them, it was a palace. For the first time in weeks, they wouldn't be sleeping on wet cardboard. For the first time in weeks, they would be protected from the cold. Before going to sleep, Sarah gathered her 4 children and made them kneel beside her. "Let's thank God," she told them, "because today He sent us a miracle." The 5 of them held hands and closed their eyes. "Thank you, God," Sarah began, her voice choked. "Thank you for not abandoning us. Thank you for hearing my prayers when I thought you weren't listening. Thank you for sending that man this morning. Thank you for Brenda. Thank you for this food, for this roof, for this job. I promise I won't waste this opportunity. I promise that when I have abundance, I will help others as you helped me today. Amen." The tears ran down her cheeks, but they were tears of gratitude. She thought of the man from that morning, of his deep eyes, his calming voice, the words he had said to her. "You have known my name since you were a child." A shiver ran through her again. There was no doubt. That man was not an ordinary man. It was Jesus. She knew it in the deepest part of her soul. Jesus had walked to her cardboard bed under the underpass. Jesus had brought her food and medicine. Jesus had embraced her as she cried. The next morning, Sarah started working at the diner. The work was hard, as Brenda had warned her. But for Sarah, who had spent weeks sleeping on the street, not knowing where her children's next meal would come from, this job was a blessing from heaven. She washed dishes from morning until afternoon, cleaned tables, helped chop vegetables, and served food to customers. Her hands, already calloused from years of domestic work, cracked with the hot water and soap, but she didn't care. Every dollar she earned was a step further from the street. Every day that passed was another day of hope. The diner's customers began to know her. Some gave her small tips, others gave her clothes their own children no longer used. A lady brought her an old but functional pram for Leo. Another gentleman gave her 3 pairs of shoes that fit Jack, Sam, and Millie perfectly. One afternoon, as Sarah was cleaning tables after lunch, Father Michael, the priest from St. Jude's parish, entered the diner. He was an older man, about 65, with completely white hair and thick-framed glasses. He often came to eat at the diner. "Good afternoon, Father." Sarah greeted him with a smile. "Good afternoon, my dear," Father Michael replied. "Sit for a moment, please. I want to talk to you." Sarah sat in the chair opposite him, a little nervous. Had she done something wrong? "Brenda told me your story," the father said gently. "She told me you lived on the street with your 4 children and found this job just when you needed it most." Sarah looked down, embarrassed. "Yes, Father, those were very difficult times, but she also told me something else," Father Michael continued. "She told me that you said a man brought you food and medicine one morning, a man who disappeared without a trace." Sarah looked up, surprised. She didn't know Brenda had told the father that. "Yes, Father. It was something I can't explain in words." Father Michael took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. When he spoke again, his voice trembled slightly. "Sarah, do you know what the Bible says in the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 2? She shook her head. "It says, 'Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, For by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. And in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 40, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Father Michael leaned forward and took Sarah's cracked hands in his. "My dear, what you experienced was no coincidence. It was a divine encounter. You have experienced what very few people live in their entire lives. A face-to-face encounter with the sacred." Tears began to well up in Sarah's eyes. Do you think it was him, Father? Do you really think it was Jesus?" "With all my heart, my dear. With all my heart. I believe it. And do you know why he visited you? Because your faith, even in the midst of absolute despair, never died. Because you loved your children more than your own life. Because you gave your last piece of bread before going to sleep hungry. Because your heart, despite everything, remained pure." Sarah covered her face and cried. Father Michael let her cry, knowing she needed to release everything she had held inside. "And what do I do now, Father?" she finally asked. "How do I live after something like that?" "By living as he taught you," the father replied. "Loving, sharing, helping the needy, and never forgetting that you are not alone, that you have never been alone." That night, as she served dinner to her children in the small room behind the diner, Sarah told them what Father Michael had said. The children listened attentively, especially Jack, who was old enough to understand the magnitude of what had happened. "So, that man was really Jesus?" Jack asked in awe. "Yes, my love, it was Jesus." "And why did he come to help us?" Millie asked. Sarah hugged her 4 children tightly, because God never abandons his children. Even though sometimes it seems like he doesn't hear us, even though sometimes we feel alone, he is always there, always watching over us, and always sends help when we need it most. 3 weeks after starting work at the diner, something extraordinary happened. Brenda received a call from her daughter, who lived in America. Her daughter needed her to come and care for her because she had just had complicated surgery. Brenda would be away for at least 6 months. "Sarah," Brenda said one afternoon, "I need you to take charge of the diner while I'm away. You already know how everything works. I'll leave you with the supplier. He'll bring you everything you need each week, and I'm going to give you a raise, an extra $50 a week. Can you do it?" Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You trust me to look after your business?" "More than anyone, my dear. You've proven to be honest, hardworking, and responsible. I know the diner will be in good hands. Share if you know someone who needs this message. This story is just beginning." 4 months passed since Brenda left for America. Sarah managed the diner with absolute dedication. She woke at 5 a.m. to prepare the day's specials. She opened at 8, served customers with a smile, even on the most exhausting days. And at night, after closing and cleaning everything, she collapsed exhausted onto the mattress in the small room with her 4 children. The children were better than ever. Leo was already a year old and starting to walk. Millie had learned to help her mum by setting napkins on the tables. Jack and Sam were attending primary school 3 blocks away, thanks to Father Michael, who had enrolled them and secured school supplies. Life, for the first time in a long time, made sense. It had purpose. Sarah had saved $600 from her tips. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had in years. Every dollar represented hope. Every dollar represented a possible future for her children. But as often happens when things are going well, the test arrived. One June afternoon, as Sarah was preparing the tables for lunch, 2 men entered the diner. They wore cheap, ill-fitting suits and had the air of those accustomed to intimidating. They sat at a back table without waiting to be served. "Good morning," Sarah said, with her usual smile. "What can I get for you?" One of the men, the taller one, with a thin mustache and cold eyes, looked her up and down with contempt. "We're not here to eat," he said in a harsh voice. "We're here to talk business." Sarah felt something bad was coming. "Business? I don't understand." The other man, shorter but bulkier, took a yellow envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table with a dry thud. "This premises belongs to our boss, Mr. O'Malley. The lady who rented it never paid the last 6 months. Now, either someone pays what's owed, or we close this place down and rent it to someone else." Sarah's heart began to pound. "But I only work here. The owner is Brenda. She's in America looking after her daughter. I can call her." "Doesn't matter where she is," the man with the mustache interrupted. "Either someone pays the $18,000 in overdue rent, or in 3 days, the truck comes, takes everything out, and puts a padlock on the door. Ivan Batin Mayuan." It was an impossible amount. Sarah barely had $600 saved. There was no way to get that amount in 3 days. "Please, give me more time," she pleaded. "Can I talk to Brenda? She can send the money from over there." 3 days, the bulky man repeated, and both stood up. "Otherwise, goodbye dinner." When they left, Sarah stood in the middle of the empty place, feeling the world collapse around her again. All the progress of those months, all the effort, all the hard work would be lost just like that. That night, she called Brenda from the public phone on the corner. Brenda cried when she heard the news. "Sarah, I don't have that money," she said with a broken voice. "Everything I had I used to pay for my daughter's surgery, and it wasn't even enough. I'm in debt here too. So, what do we do, ma'am?" "I don't know, dear. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that because of me, you and your children are going to lose that place." Sarah hung up the phone and sat on the street curb. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. But most of all, she wanted to give up. "Why, God?" she thought. "Why do you give me hope and then take it away?" She walked back to the diner with slow steps. The children were already asleep. She stood at the door of the small room, watching them. Her 4 children, so innocent, so unaware of the new storm approaching. She thought of the man who had appeared that February morning under the underpass. She thought of his words, "I have never abandoned you. I have always been there. Where are you now?" She silently asked the sky. The next day, Sarah made a decision. If she only had 2 days left before the diner closed, she would work those 2 days with all her heart. She would not give up. She would not be defeated. She would do what she had to do. During lunch, the diner was full as usual. Regular customers, who came every day, construction workers, domestic helpers, taxi drivers. All of them had come to know Sarah over those months. They all knew she was a good woman. As she served food at a table, a regular customer, Mrs. Henderson, noticed that Sarah's eyes were red from crying so much. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked with concern. Sarah tried to smile, but couldn't. Tears began to fall. "They're going to close the diner, ma'am. The owner owes rent and can't pay. In 2 days they're coming to put a padlock on it." Mrs. Henderson immediately stood up. "How much is owed?" $18,000. Mrs. Henderson whistled softly. "That's a lot of money, but let me talk to my husband. Maybe we can help with something." Other customers who overheard the conversation came closer. "I can give $50, said Gary, the taxi driver who ate there every day. "I've got $20 right now," added a domestic helper. "I don't have money, but I can bring groceries for the children," said another lady. Sarah looked at them in disbelief. These people who barely knew her were willing to help her. They were willing to give what little they had. Throughout the day, customers kept putting notes into a jar Sarah placed on the counter. At the end of the day, when she counted the money, there was $3,900. It wasn't enough for the $18,000, but it was more than she had had in her entire life. That night, as she put her children to sleep, Jack asked her, "Mummy, is it true they're going to close the diner?" Sarah didn't want to lie to them. "It's possible, my love. But we're doing everything we can to prevent it. And if they close, where will we go?" It was the question Sarah didn't want to answer because she had no answer. "God will provide, my darling. As he did before, he will do it again." "Will that man who helped us come again?" Millie asked. "I don't know, my love. I don't know." The next morning, the last day before they came to close the diner, Sarah got up earlier than ever. She prepared the best chicken casserole she knew how to make. Chicken in a rich sauce with white rice. She set the tables with special care. She cleaned every corner of the place until it shone. "If this is my last day here," she thought, "I'm going to make it count." At 9 a.m., a man entered the diner. Sarah looked up and froze. It was him. The same man who had appeared under the underpass 4 months ago. The same deep eyes. The same calming presence. The same simple clothes. Sarah dropped the cloth she had in her hands. Her legs trembled. "You?" she barely managed to whisper. The man smiled and sat at one of the tables. "They told me they serve the best chicken casserole in Riverbend here." Sarah couldn't move. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it would burst from her chest. It was real. Was she dreaming? "Is it really you?" she asked with a trembling voice. "Were you expecting someone else?" Tears began to stream down Sarah's cheeks. She walked to the table and sank into the chair opposite him. "I need you again," she said between sobs. "I know I have no right to ask for more. You already helped me once, but my children, this place is all I have, and they're going to take it away." The man extended his hand across the table. Sarah took it with hers, and at that moment, She felt the same peace she had felt that February dawn. The same warmth, the same certainty that everything would be all right. "Sarah," he said in a soft but firm voice, "do you remember what I told you last time we met?" She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "You told me I would see you in my children's eyes, in the faces of needy people. And haven't you seen me?" Sarah thought of the past 4 months, of Brenda who gave her a job when no one else would, of the customers who yesterday gave her money without a second thought, of Father Michael, who enrolled her children in school, of all the people who had helped her without asking for anything in return. "Yes," she whispered, "I've seen you. I've seen your goodness in so many people." "Then you know what you have to do." "What? What should I do?" The man leaned forward, and his eyes shone with that special light Sarah remembered so well. "Trust. As you trusted that night under the underpass when you had nothing. As you trusted when you thought no one was listening. Trust now, Sarah, because this trial is not to destroy you. It is to strengthen you. It is to prepare you for what is to come." "And what is to come?" "Greater things than you can imagine. But first you need to remember who you are. You are not the woman who slept on cardboard. You are not the woman who had icy water thrown on her. You are my daughter. You are strong. You are capable. And I will never, never abandon you." Sarah closed her eyes and let those words penetrate to the deepest part of her being. She felt peace fill every corner of her soul. She felt the fear vanish. When she opened her eyes, the man was still there, looking at her with infinite tenderness. "Go serve your chicken casserole," he told her with a smile. "And trust." Sarah nodded, stood up, and went to the kitchen. When she returned with a plate of food, the man was gone. On the table where he had been was a white envelope. With trembling hands, Sarah opened it. Inside were exactly $18,000 in $100 notes. Sarah fell to her knees in the middle of the diner and began to cry. She cried with relief. She cried with gratitude. She cried with pure love, because she had just experienced a divine encounter for the second time, because she had just received for the second time confirmation that God was real, that Jesus walked among them, that they were never, never alone. Jack, who had heard everything from the small room, ran out and hugged his mother. "He came again, didn't he, Mummy?" "Yes, my love. He came again. Have you ever felt that God abandoned you in your most difficult moments? Don't miss what's coming. Sarah's story is just beginning to multiply." 5 years after that day, when Jesus appeared for the second time in the diner, Sarah's life was completely different. Brenda returned from America, and seeing how Sarah had managed the business with such dedication, she made a decision that would change everything forever. "Sarah," she said one Sunday afternoon after closing, "I want you to be my partner. 50% of the business is yours. You've earned it with hard work, honesty, and love." Sarah fell to her knees and cried as she hadn't cried since that dawn under the underpass. The diner was now also hers. Her 4 children had a future. God had fulfilled every promise. But Sarah's miracle didn't end there. It began to multiply. One night, as she was closing the diner, a young woman approached timidly. She carried a baby in her arms, and 2 other small children walked behind her. Her clothes were dirty. Her eyes reflected desperation. Sarah felt her heart stop. It was like seeing herself 5 years ago. "Excuse me, ma'am," the woman said with a broken voice. "Do you have any leftover food? My children haven't eaten since yesterday. Anything, please." Sarah didn't think twice. She opened the door and let her in with her 3 children. "Sit down," she told them tenderly. "I'll prepare something warm for you." As she served generous plates of chicken casserole, rice, and baked beans, Sarah remembered the words Jesus had told her. "You will see me in the face of every needy person you encounter on your path." She looked at that desperate woman feeding her children and saw her own reflection. She knew at that moment that her mission was not just to survive, it was to multiply the miracle she had received. "What's your name?" she asked as she sat beside her. "Emily," the woman replied through tears. "I'm 28. My husband abandoned us 3 months ago, and we lost our home. I have no family, no job, nothing." Sarah took Emily's hands in hers. "Yes, you have something. You have faith, and you have someone who will help you. Tomorrow you start working here with me, and you and your children can stay in the back room until you find a better place." Emily looked at her with wide, incredulous eyes. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Sarah smiled with tears in her eyes. "Because 5 years ago someone did exactly the same thing for me, and that someone taught me that miracles multiply when we share them." That night, Sarah called her 4 children, who were now older. Leo was 6, Millie 9, Sam 10, and Jack 12. Kids, there's a family that's going to stay with us for a while. They'll sleep in our small room, and we'll sleep in the diner until we find them a place. The 4 children looked at their mother with pride. It's okay, Mummy, Jack said. We want to help too. Thus began something no one had planned, but which was written in Sarah's destiny from that night under the underpass. The diner became much more than a business. It became a refuge. Every week, Sarah fed needy families for free. On Thursday nights, after closing, she opened the doors to provide dinner to anyone who had nothing to eat. Single mothers with their children, elderly people without family, workers who had lost their jobs all found a hot meal and a word of hope at Sarah's diner. Brenda, far from being annoyed, fully supported the initiative. This is what this place was always meant to be, she told Sarah. A home for the homeless. 3 years later, the diner was already feeding more than 200 people weekly. The community began to donate groceries. Regular customers left extra tips specifically for the aid fund. And most miraculously, no matter how much food they gave away, there was always enough. Sarah knew it. It was the same miracle of multiplication that Jesus had performed with the loaves and fish. It was the same miracle she had experienced that dawn when she received food that had no human explanation. Father Michael, now 72, visited the diner every week to bless the food and pray with the families. Sarah told him one day with tears in her eyes, "You have understood the heart of the gospel better than many who call themselves Christians their whole lives. You are feeding Christ in every person who walks through that door. Father, I am only returning what was given to me. None of this is mine. It is all His. That's why God chose you, my dear, because your heart never forgot where you came from." One day, a local newspaper reporter came to the diner. She had heard rumors about the woman who fed hundreds for free every week without asking for anything in return. "Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to write about your story. People need to know what you do here." Sarah hesitated. She didn't want attention, she wasn't seeking recognition, but Father Michael encouraged her. "Let them tell your story. Not out of pride, but because it can inspire others to do the same. It can multiply the miracle even more." The reporter published an article titled, "The Woman Who Feeds Riverbend, From Cardboard on the Street to the Table of Hope." In the article, Sarah told everything: the street, the icy water, the mysterious man who brought her food, the second encounter with the money to pay the rent, her absolute conviction that it had been Jesus who visited her. Many believed her, some doubted, but no one could deny that something extraordinary had happened in that woman's life. After the publication, more donations began to arrive. Small businesses donated groceries. Individuals sent money. A bakery began to donate leftover bread daily. Sarah used every dollar to help more people. She created a small clothing bank where families could take what they needed without paying. She set up a shelf with free school supplies for children from poor families. And every Thursday night, the line of people waiting for dinner stretched down the entire block. Sarah's 4 children grew up helping. Jack, now 17, served food alongside his mother. Sam washed dishes. Millie looked after the babies while their mothers ate. And Leo, at 11, handed out bread with a smile that lit up the place. One Thursday night, 10 years after that first encounter under the underpass, Sarah was serving food when she saw something that made her stop. At the end of the line was a middle-aged man. He wore simple clothes. His face looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. When it was his turn, the man looked at her with a soft smile. "Hello, Sarah." She felt her heart quicken. Those eyes, that voice, that peace. "You," she whispered. The man nodded slightly, saying nothing more. He extended his plate, and Sarah filled it with trembling hands. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," the man said. "I always knew you would do this. What started with a plate of food under an underpass now feeds hundreds. What started with an empty pot now overflows to bless everyone." Sarah couldn't speak. She just cried silently as she served. The man took his plate and me sat at a back table. Sarah watched him from afar, wiping her tears. When she looked again, the chair was empty. The plate was still full on the table, untouched, but on the plate was a handwritten note. "I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Well done, beloved daughter. Well done." Sarah pressed the note to her chest and sank into a chair. Father Michael, who had witnessed everything from the entrance, approached and placed his hand on her shoulder. "You saw him again, didn't you?" "Yes, Father. He came again. He came to see what we did with his gift, and I'm sure he's proud. Like this story, if it gave you back hope. If you feel that God can also do miracles in your life, Leave a heart in the comments. 15 years after that dawn under the underpass, Sarah Thompson was 47, but her face radiated a peace few people possess. The diner had grown. It now had a larger premises in the same suburb. Brenda, 82, had retired and left the entire business to Sarah. But more important than the business was what happened every week. More than 500 people received free food every Thursday. The initiative had inspired other businesses in Riverbend to do the same. 3 more diners in neighboring suburbs had adopted the Kindness Thursdays model. The community kitchen, which had started informally, now had a name: the Hope Haven Community Kitchen. Sarah's 4 children, now adults, continued the legacy alongside their mother. Jack, 27, was an engineer but dedicated his evenings to coordinating donations and logistics for the kitchen. Sam, 25, was a primary school teacher and gave free reading classes to children from the kitchen on weekends. Millie, 24, was studying social work and attended to cases of families who needed support beyond food. And Leo, 21, had decided to study culinary arts to improve the nutritional quality of the food they served. The entire family had dedicated their lives to multiplying that miracle they received under the underpass. One October afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected call. It was from the Riverbend Local Council. "Mrs. Sarah Thompson, we would like to invite you to a ceremony next Saturday. The municipality wants to recognize your community work with the Citizen of the Year award." Sarah didn't want recognition. She had never sought fame, but her children convinced her. "Mom, this isn't for you. It's for more people to know the story and be inspired. It's to multiply the miracle even more." On Saturday, Sarah arrived at the municipal auditorium with her 4 children, Brenda, Father Michael, and more than 200 people from the community kitchen who wanted to accompany her. When she was called to the stage, tears were already streaming down her cheeks. The mayor read her story in front of hundreds of people. Sarah Thompson arrived in Riverbend 15 years ago with nothing. She slept under an underpass with her 4 children. She suffered humiliations, went hungry, but never lost faith. And when she received help, she didn't keep it for herself. She multiplied it. Today, thanks to her, 500 families eat every week. Dozens of children receive free education, and hundreds of people have found hope when they thought there was no way out. The audience stood up and applauded for 5 full minutes. Sarah couldn't stop crying. When she was given the microphone to speak, she took a deep breath and looked at all those people. "I didn't do anything special," she began with a trembling voice. "Everything I have, everything I've done, was because 15 years ago, when I was at the lowest point of my life, God sent me a miracle. He sent me someone who reminded me that we are never alone, that there is always hope, that God hears every prayer, even those we cry in silence." She paused and looked at her 4 children in the front row. "My children lived with me on cardboard. They saw a cruel woman throw icy water on us. They went hungry, and yet they never lost faith. They are the true miracle. They are the ones who continue this mission every day." She pointed to the audience. "And each of you who comes to the kitchen, each one who donates, each one who helps in any way, is also part of this miracle. Because miracles are not just for one person. Miracles multiply when we share them." She took a deep breath before finishing. "I know there are people here who are going through difficult times, who feel that God has abandoned them, who think there is no way out. I want you to know, I was there. I thought it was all over, but God had other plans, and if He did it for me, He can do it for you. You just need to keep the faith. You just need to take one more step, because when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up." The ovation was deafening. After the ceremony, as Sarah greeted people, an older woman approached. It took Sarah a few seconds to recognize her. It was Mrs. Davies, the woman who had thrown icy water on her 15 years ago. Sarah's heart pounded. For a moment, the painful memories returned, but then she saw the woman's eyes. There was no longer contempt. There were tears. There was remorse. "Sarah, Mrs. Davies said with a broken voice, "I don't know if you remember me. I was horrible to you. I threw icy water on you and your baby. I treated you as if you weren't human. And all these years, that moment has tormented me." Mrs. Davies began to cry. "I lost my son many years ago, a car accident. He was the same age as your Leo that day. And I think when I saw you with your baby, something in me broke. I saw you with what I no longer had, and I punished you for it. I was cruel. I was unjust. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah felt something stir in her chest. She could have felt anger. She could have remembered the cold of the water, her son's cry, but instead, She felt compassion. "Mrs. Davies," she said softly, "I forgive you from my heart. I forgive you." She stepped forward and embraced her. Mrs. Davies collapsed in her arms, crying like a child. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she sobbed. "None of us deserve the grace we receive," Sarah replied. "But God gives it to us anyway, and I give it to you too." That moment was witnessed by dozens of people. Some cried, others filmed with their phones, but everyone understood that they had just seen something sacred, forgiveness in its purest form. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Davies began to donate monthly to the kitchen. She also volunteered on Thursdays, and although she never spoke much about it again, her presence every week was a silent testament to redemption. Father Michael, now 87, and walking with difficulty, visited Sarah one November afternoon. "Sarah, my time on this earth is coming to an end," he told her serenely, "and I want you to know that meeting you was one of the greatest gifts of my priestly life." "Don't say that. Father, you still have so much to do." "No, my dear, my mission is complete. I saw what God wanted me to see, a real miracle, a true encounter with the divine. And I saw how that encounter transformed not only your life, but the lives of hundreds. That's all a priest can ask for." He took Sarah's hands in his. "You have lived what St. Francis asked, to be an instrument of peace. You have fed the hungry. You have clothed the naked. You have comforted the sorrowful. You have forgiven those who hurt you. Jesus lives in you, Sarah, and lives in everything you do." 3 months later, Father Michael passed away in his sleep. At his funeral, Sarah read a passage from the Gospel of Matthew that he had marked in his personal Bible. "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Those words that had guided her life for 15 years resonated in the packed church, and Sarah knew that Father Michael's legacy would continue in every plate of food served, in every embrace given, in every life transformed. Save this video. Watch it again when you need to remember that God never abandons his children. Share it on your story with Jesus is in my story too. Today in 2027, Sarah Thompson is 49 years old. The Hope Haven Community Kitchen is an institution in Riverbend. Every week, more than 600 people receive food, clothing, education, and most importantly, hope. But this is not just Sarah's story. It is the story of what God can do when he finds a willing heart. It is the story of how a moment of despair can turn into a life of purpose. It is the story of how Jesus walks among us, especially in the darkest moments. Sarah keeps 3 things as treasures: the note Jesus left her that night in the diner, the first blanket Brenda gave her, and a photograph of her 4 children under the underpass, taken by a social worker before everything changed. These objects are in a display case at the kitchen with a plaque that reads, "Where there was hunger, God provided. Where there was despair, God brought hope. Where there was an encounter, God brought eternity." Thousands of people have visited the kitchen just to see that display case, to touch that blanket, to read that note, because they need to believe that miracles are real, that God still acts, that they are not alone. And now I want to speak directly to you who are watching this video. Perhaps you came here looking for an inspiring story. Perhaps YouTube recommended it to you, and you decided to give it a chance. Or perhaps someone who loves you sent you this video because they know you are going through something difficult. Whatever the reason, it is no coincidence that you are here. I want to ask you something. What is your icy water moment? What is that moment in your life when you felt you hit rock bottom? Where you felt God had abandoned you? Where you thought there was no way out? Perhaps it is an illness that has no cure. Perhaps it is a debt you cannot pay. Perhaps it is a child who drifted away. Perhaps it is a broken marriage. Perhaps it is an addiction you cannot overcome. Perhaps it is a loss you cannot move past. Perhaps, like Sarah, you are on your own cardboard under the underpass. A place where hope seems a lie and faith seems an illusion. I want you to know something. You are not alone. Jesus is with you right now, in this moment. As you watch this video, he knows your pain. He knows your tears. He knows those prayers you say in the early hours when no one sees you cry. He has not abandoned you. He never has, and he never will. Sarah discovered it in her darkest moment, and you can discover it in yours too. Sarah's story teaches us 3 powerful truths. First, miracles arrive when we least expect them, but need them most. Sarah prayed for weeks with no apparent answer, but when God's perfect time arrived, everything changed. Second, miracles multiply when we share them. Sarah did not hoard her blessing. She poured it out on others, and that is why her miracle is still alive 15 years later. Third, Jesus walks among us in the faces of the most needy. Every time you help someone, you are helping Christ himself. So, what can you do today with this story? If you are going through your icy water moment, keep the faith. Take one more step. Breathe one more day. Pray one more prayer. Because your miracle is closer than you imagine. If you have already overcome your dark moment, share your blessing. Become someone else's miracle. Be the answer to someone else's prayer. Multiply what you received. And if you have never experienced an encounter with God, open the door of your heart to Him. He is knocking. He has always been knocking. You just need to let Him in. Sarah was not special. She was no holier than anyone else. She had no supernatural powers. She was just a desperate mother who clung to faith when she had nothing left. And God used her to change hundreds of lives. Imagine what God can do with you. Sarah's story is real. The Hope Haven Community Kitchen exists. The 500 people who eat every Thursday are real. And the encounter Sarah had with Jesus was as real as the air you breathe. Because God has not stopped doing miracles. He just needs hearts willing to believe and hands willing to serve. If this testimony touched your heart, I invite you to do 3 things. 1. Subscribe to Jesus in My Story and activate the bell to receive new testimonies every week. Every story will remind you that you are never alone. 2. Share this video with someone who needs to know that God performs real miracles. Tag that person in the comments. It might be just the message they need to hear today not to give up. 3. Leave me your testimony. What was your icy water moment? When did you feel you hit rock bottom? Tell me below. Your story can inspire thousands who are going through the same thing. And if you are going through a difficult time right now, leave a comment with, "I need a miracle," and this faith community will pray for you. You are not alone. We are thousands who have lived what you are living. And we are here to remind you that there is a way out. Remember, Jesus walks among us. He is in the face of the needy. He is in the helping hand. He is in the forgiving heart. He is in the hope that does not give up. He is in your story too. May God bless you, protect you, lift you when you fall, embrace you when you cry, and remind you every day that you were created with purpose and loved with eternal love. You are never alone, you never have been, and you never will be. Amen.